July 30th, 1945, Philippine Sea. Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto presses his face against the periscope eyepiece, his hand steady despite what he's seeing. The target fills his vision. A heavy cruiser, approximately 10,000 meters distant, running without escorts, no zigzag pattern, making perhaps 17 knots on a straight course. This cannot be real. No American warship travels alone in these waters. Not in July 1945. Not with American submarines prowling every sea lane. Not with the war's outcome already decided. Yet there she is. A Portland-class heavy cruiser, her distinctive silhouette unmistakable even in moonlight. Hashimoto has studied Allied ship recognition manuals for 4 years. He knows this profile. 8-inch gun turrets, long forecastle, the distinctive bridge structure. USS Indianapolis, almost certainly. What is she doing here? Alone, unprotected, sailing like the war ended yesterday. The submarine I-58 sits at periscope depth, her diesel engines shut down, running on electric motors that make no sound in the water. Hashimoto's crew has been tracking this target for 30 minutes, ever since the lookout spotted her silhouette against the horizon. For 30 minutes, Hashimoto has waited for the escorts to appear, for the destroyers that should be screening a capital ship, for the destroyer escorts that should be running anti-submarine patterns. They never came. Hashimoto calculates the geometry. The cruiser's course will bring her within 1,500 meters, point-blank range for Type 95 torpedoes. The sea state is calm. Visibility is good. The target is presenting her starboard side, the ideal angle for torpedo attack. Every factor favors the submarine. This is the perfect firing solution, the kind submariners dream about but rarely encounter. He makes his decision. Battle stations. Prepare 6 torpedoes for firing. The order passes through I-58's cramped hull. Men scramble to torpedo tubes. Firing solutions are calculated and double-checked. The submarine's bow swings slightly, aligning 6 torpedo tubes with the target's track. Hashimoto watches through the periscope as the range closes. 3,000 meters, 2,500 meters, 2,000 meters. At 0014 hours, Hashimoto gives the order. Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 5, Fire 6. 6 Type 95 torpedoes launch at 5-second intervals. Each torpedo carries 550 kilograms of explosive. They run at 48 knots, leaving phosphorescent trails in the dark water. Hashimoto keeps his eye pressed to the periscope, watching the trails converge on the cruiser's hull. 47 seconds after launch, the first torpedo strikes Indianapolis amidships on the starboard side. The explosion lifts the cruiser's bow out of the water. 12 seconds later, the second torpedo hits forward near the number 1 turret. The explosion is catastrophic. The forward section of the ship disintegrates. Hashimoto watches as the cruiser's bow begins sinking immediately, dragging the rest of the ship down at an angle that means she has minutes, not hours. He cannot know that he has just sunk the ship that delivered the atomic bomb. He cannot know that 900 men are about to enter the water with no rescue coming. He cannot know that this single attack will result in the U.S. Navy's greatest loss of life from a single ship. All Hashimoto knows is that the cruiser is dying, sinking by the bow, going down faster than any ship he's ever seen torpedoed. 12 minutes after the torpedoes hit, USS Indianapolis disappears beneath the Philippine Sea. Hashimoto watches through the periscope as the stern rises vertically, propellers still spinning, then slides under. The surface is empty except for oil slicks and debris. He orders I-58 to dive deep and withdraw. The submarine has 7 torpedoes remaining. There may be escorts converging. Time to disappear. What Hashimoto doesn't see, what he cannot see from a submarine departing the area, is the horror beginning in the water behind him. Approximately 900 men are floating in the Philippine Sea. No rafts were launched. The ship sank too fast. No distress signal was sent. The radio room was destroyed in the first explosion. No one knows Indianapolis is missing. No one is coming to rescue them. 10 days earlier, July 16, 1945, USS Indianapolis had departed Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California, carrying the most important cargo in human history. Locked in a compartment below deck were components of Little Boy, the uranium-based atomic bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima 3 weeks later. The enriched uranium core, uranium target rings, and firing mechanism were divided between a lead bucket welded to the deck and a large wooden crate secured in an officer's cabin. Captain Charles Butler McVay III commanded Indianapolis. At 46 years old, McVay was an experienced officer from a Navy family. His father had been an admiral. McVay had commanded Indianapolis since November 1944, taking her through the Iwo Jima and Okinawa campaigns. The ship had been damaged by a kamikaze at Okinawa in March 1945, requiring repairs that kept her out of action for months. The atomic bomb delivery mission was Indianapolis's return to combat operations. The mission was designated top secret. Only McVay and 2 officers knew what the cargo actually was. The crew was told they were carrying critical components for the invasion of Japan. Speed was essential. Indianapolis was ordered to make maximum speed. The heavy cruiser could reach 32 knots, and to operate independently without escort. The Navy wanted the bomb components delivered to Tinian Island as quickly as possible. Every day mattered. The Manhattan Project was behind schedule. The invasion of Japan was planned for November 1st, 1945. If the atomic bombs could end the war before invasion became necessary, hundreds of thousands of lives, American and Japanese, might be saved. Indianapolis departed San Francisco on July 16, 1945, at 08:36 hours. She crossed 5,000 miles of Pacific Ocean in 10 days, averaging over 29 knots. On July 26th, Indianapolis arrived at Tinian Island and offloaded the atomic bomb components. The mission was complete. Little Boy would be assembled over the following days and dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, 9 days later. After delivering the bomb components, Indianapolis received orders to proceed to Guam for training exercises, then to Leyte Gulf in the Philippines to join other ships preparing for the invasion of Japan. The orders were routine. Indianapolis was no longer carrying secret cargo. She was just another heavy cruiser repositioning for operations. The Navy saw no reason to provide escort for a ship traveling through waters considered largely secure. Indianapolis departed Guam on July 28, 1945, at 0900 hours, heading for Leyte Gulf, 1,300 miles to the west. Captain McVay requested destroyer escort. The request was denied. The Navy's routing office determined that no escort was necessary. The route passed through waters where submarine contacts had been rare in recent months. American submarines dominated the Pacific. Japanese submarines were few, poorly maintained, and largely ineffective by mid-1945. McVay did request that Indianapolis be routed along paths where other ships were traveling, providing some mutual support and making rescue more likely if problems occurred. This request was also denied. Indianapolis would travel independently on a direct route to Leyte Gulf. Estimated arrival, July 31, 1945. The Navy made one more critical decision that would prove fatal. Indianapolis was not placed on the arrival report list at Leyte Gulf. When ships were expected to arrive at a port, the port commander was notified. If the ship didn't arrive on schedule, the port commander would investigate. Indianapolis was not included on this list due to administrative oversight. When she failed to arrive at Leyte Gulf on July 31st, no one noticed. No one investigated. The ship simply disappeared from the Navy's tracking, and no one realized it had happened. Japanese submarine Y-58 was on her 5th war patrol when she encountered Indianapolis. Commander Hashimoto had departed Kure Naval Base on July 18, 1945, with orders to patrol shipping lanes between Guam and Leyte Gulf. The submarine carried 19 Type 95 torpedoes and 6 Chiton, human-guided suicide torpedoes that were piloted by a volunteer crews who would ride them to targets, dying in the explosion. I-58 was not an elite submarine. She was a Type B-3 submarine, displacing 2,140 tons surfaced, with a crew of 94 men. By July 1945, the Japanese submarine force was a shadow of its former capability. Fuel shortages limited patrols. Crew training was minimal. American anti-submarine warfare had become so effective that Japanese submarines rarely survived long enough to attack targets. I-58 had completed 4 previous war patrols with limited success. A few merchant ships damaged, no major warships sunk. Hashimoto was 36 years old, a career submarine officer who had commanded I-58 since November 1944. He was competent, but not exceptional. His crew was experienced, but tired. Everyone knew Japan was losing the war. Everyone knew the submarine service's casualty rates exceeded 70%. Survival was unlikely, but orders were orders. I-58 would patrol until sunk or until the war ended. On the night of July 29th to 30th, I-58 was running on the surface, recharging batteries, when lookouts spotted smoke on the horizon at approximately 2330 hours. Hashimoto ordered the submarine to dive and begin tracking. Over the next hour, the target's course and speed became clear. A large warship alone, making good speed on a straight course. No zigzagging, no escorts visible. Hashimoto initially planned to use the Captain suicide torpedoes. The target was perfect for them. Large, predictable course, close enough for Captain to reach. But sea conditions and technical problems with the Captain launch systems convinced Hashimoto to use conventional torpedoes instead. The decision would prove fortunate. Captain were unreliable. Conventional torpedoes were proven weapons. The attack sequence began at 0009 hours when I-58 reached firing position. The range was 1,500 meters. The target's bearing was 310 degrees. Speed estimated at 12 knots. Indianapolis was actually making 17 knots. But the speed estimate didn't matter at this range. Hashimoto set the torpedoes to run at a depth of 4 meters, designed to strike below the waterline. 6 torpedoes fired, 2 hit, 4 missed or malfunctioned. Approximately 33% hit rate, typical for submarine attacks. The 2 hits were devastating. The first struck near frame 50, the second near frame 20. Frame 20 was directly below the forward turret and near the forward fuel tanks. The explosion there was catastrophic. The forward section of Indianapolis collapsed instantly. The bow twisted downward, flooding, pulling it under. The second hit destroyed the starboard side amidships, opening the hull to the sea. Water poured into engineering spaces, electrical systems failed, and the ship lost all power within minutes. Captain McVay, asleep in his cabin when the torpedoes hit, reached the bridge within seconds. He immediately recognized the ship was doomed. The bow was already underwater. The list was increasing. No power meant no pumps to fight flooding. He gave the order to abandon ship at approximately 0020 hours, 6 minutes after the torpedoes hit. 12 minutes after the attack, USS Indianapolis sank. Approximately 300 men went down with the ship, trapped below decks or killed in the explosions. Approximately 900 men entered the water. Most had no life jackets. Few rafts were launched. The ship sank too quickly for organized evacuation. Men jumped from the sinking hull or were swept away as the ship went under. The survivors of USS Indianapolis faced conditions that would become the U.S. Navy's worst disaster at sea. Approximately 900 men were scattered across several miles of ocean in the Philippine Sea. The water temperature was 85 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough to prevent hypothermia, but offering no other comfort. The immediate problems were obvious. Few men had life jackets. The ship sank so quickly that organized abandon ship procedures were impossible. Some men grabbed floating debris. Some found Kapok life preservers that had floated free from storage. Many had nothing, treading water continuously or holding on to others who had flotation. No distress signal had been sent. The forward radio room was destroyed in the first torpedo hit. The aft radio room lost power before operators could send SOS. The ship simply disappeared without calling for help. No one knew Indianapolis was missing. The ship was not on the arrival report at Leyte Gulf. When she failed to arrive on July 31st, Port authorities assumed she had been delayed or diverted. No investigation was launched. No search was initiated. The Navy's administrative systems had failed completely. The survivors organized as best they could in the darkness. Officers and senior enlisted gathered men into groups, hoping to maintain discipline and morale. Captain McVay formed one group of approximately 150 men. Other groups formed around other officers. Many men drifted alone, too injured or exhausted to reach groups. Dawn on July 30th revealed the full horror. Hundreds of men floating in an empty ocean. No ships visible on any horizon. No aircraft overhead. Just ocean extending to infinity in all directions. The realization spread through the groups. No one is coming. No one knows we're here. The first deaths came within hours. Men wounded in the explosions succumbed to injuries. Men without flotation drowned from exhaustion. The sun rose and began burning exposed skin. Men who had jumped from the ship wearing only underwear had no protection. By afternoon, severe sunburn covered most survivors. Then the sharks arrived. Oceanic white-tip sharks, attracted by blood and thrashing, began circling the groups. The first attacks came on the afternoon of July 30th. Men on the edges of groups, men drifting alone, men too weak to fight back. The sharks struck from below, dragging men under. Screams echoed across the water. Men pulled tighter together, creating dense groups that offered some protection. The second day brought new horrors. Thirst became overwhelming. Salt water surrounded them, but drinking it caused violent illness and accelerated dehydration. Men began drinking salt water anyway, unable to resist. Within hours, they showed signs of salt water poisoning, vomiting, diarrhea, delirium. Men who drank seawater deteriorated rapidly, dying within 24 hours in most cases. Hallucinations began on the second day and intensified on the third. Dehydrated, sunburned, sleep-deprived men began seeing things that weren't there. Some saw Indianapolis floating nearby, just below the surface, and dove down trying to reach her, drowning in the attempt. Others saw rescue ships on the horizon and swam away from groups, dying alone. Some hallucinated that their companions were Japanese soldiers and attacked them. The groups descended into chaos as men lost their minds. By the third day, July 31st, group cohesion had collapsed. Officers could no longer maintain discipline. Men drifted away or gave up, slipping under the surface. The shark attacks continued. The sun continued burning. The salt water continued poisoning those who drank. Death came constantly, from exhaustion, dehydration, drowning, shark attacks, or simply giving up. The rescue came entirely by accident. On August 2nd, 1945, at 10:25 hours, Lieutenant Wilbur Gwynn piloted a PV-1 Ventura patrol bomber on routine anti-submarine patrol. He wasn't searching for Indianapolis survivors. No one knew there were survivors to find. At 10:20 hours, Gwynn spotted an oil slick. Descending to 900 feet, he saw debris and what appeared to be people in the water. At first, he thought they might be Japanese. As he circled lower, he realized these were American sailors. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Gwynn immediately radioed Peleliu. "Many men in water. Need all available aircraft and rescue vessels." Within an hour, aircraft were en route. Within 2 hours, ships were diverting to the area. The first rescue ship, USS Cecil Doyle, arrived at 17:30 hours. Lieutenant Commander Graham Claytor violated wartime procedure by turning on floodlights at night, helping survivors see that rescue had finally come. Throughout the night of August 2nd to 3rd, Doyle and other arriving ships pulled men from the water. The rescue continued through August 3rd. Survivors were scattered over a 25-mile area. Aircraft spotted isolated groups and directed ships to them. By August 4th, it was over. 316 men had been pulled from the water alive. Approximately 900 had entered the water when Indianapolis sank. In 4 days, nearly 600 men had died from drowning, dehydration, injuries, shark attacks, or simply giving up. It was the U.S. Navy's greatest loss of life from a single ship in history, more than any single ship at Pearl Harbor. more even than Arizona. The Navy's response to the Indianapolis disaster was to find a scapegoat. On December 3, 1945, Captain Charles Butler McVay III was court-martialed on 2 charges: failing to order abandoned ship in a timely manner and hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag. The first charge was quickly dropped. The ship sank too fast for earlier orders to matter. The second charge was extraordinary. McVay was accused of failing to zigzag to complicate submarine targeting. The Navy's own orders gave commanders discretion based on conditions. On the night of July 29th to 30th, visibility was marginal, conditions where zigzagging was optional, not mandatory. The court-martial called Commander Hashimoto as a witness, the Japanese submarine commander who sank Indianapolis. Hashimoto testified clearly, zigzagging would have made no difference. The range was close enough that I-58 would have achieved hits regardless of evasive maneuvers. The court ignored Hashimoto's testimony. On December 19, 1945, McVay was convicted of hazarding his ship. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz remitted the sentence, but the conviction remained. McVay served until 1949, then lived quietly in retirement, haunted by letters from families blaming him for their sons' deaths. On November 6, 1968, Charles Butler McVay III used his Navy service revolver to end his life. He was 70 years old. In his hand was a toy sailor from his grandson's collection. The truth emerged slowly over decades. Declassified documents revealed the Navy knew Japanese submarines were active in Indianapolis's route, but never informed McVay. The failure to place Indianapolis on the arrival report at Leyte Gulf was administrative negligence that prevented rescue for 4 days. In 1996, Hunter Scott, a 12-year-old student, began researching the disaster for a school project. He interviewed 150 survivors and reviewed declassified documents, demonstrating conclusively that McVay was not at fault. Scott's research led to congressional action. In 2000, Congress passed a resolution exonerating Captain McVay. President Clinton signed it into law on October 30, 2000. The exoneration came 32 years after McVay's suicide. Commander Hashimoto became a Shinto priest after the war, carrying guilt for Indianapolis deaths, despite having simply done his duty. He traveled to America to defend McVay at the court-martial, a former enemy defending another warrior. Hashimoto died in 2000, the same year McVay was exonerated. The Indianapolis wreckage was discovered in 2017 at 5,500 meters depth. The disaster remains the U.S. Navy's worst loss of life from a single ship, evidence that institutional failures and scapegoating can be deadlier than enemy torpedoes. I-58 sank the ship. The Navy's negligence killed 600 men. If this story shocked you, hit that like button and subscribe. We're covering more classified missions and naval disasters that changed history.